A random day in June has erupted into absolute chaos across the NFL landscape. The Steelers and Dolphins have just pulled off an eye-popping blockbuster trade that almost feels like something straight out of an NBA offseason. The kind of move that makes your phone blow up with alerts and fans start dreaming up the ripple effects for the entire league. This trade, finalized only moments ago, centered around some big names. Minkah Fitzpatrick is heading to Miami, while Jalen Ramsey and Jonnu Smith are packing their bags for Pittsburgh. Draft picks were swapped as well, with the Dolphins receiving a 5th-rounder in 2027 and the Steelers picking up a 7th-rounder. The way this deal unfolded was almost comical in how fast it evolved. At first, it sounded like it was simply Ramsey going to Pittsburgh. Then, reports clarified it was a pick swap involving Minkah and Ramsey. Then, Jonnu Smith's name entered the conversation out of nowhere, and suddenly everything was on the table in a single package deal. It was a wild, unpredictable morning, one that honestly felt more like the start of NBA free agency than anything you usually see in the NFL during June. For the Cowboys, the immediate impact is pretty straightforward. Jalen Ramsey is off the market, and he was never really going to be a realistic target for Dallas in the first place. His contract was simply too big to justify. But what's remarkable is that Ramsey somehow negotiated himself a pay raise in the middle of this trade. Credit where it's due, that's elite-level hustle. He managed to tack on another $1.5 million to his compensation and got some of his incentives guaranteed, which is the kind of leverage move that very few players pull off when they're on the move. The Minkah Fitzpatrick piece of this is almost more fascinating. A few years ago, the Cowboys did show some interest in trying to acquire Minkah when he was first made available by the Dolphins, but Dallas's offer wasn't even close to what Pittsburgh eventually gave up to get him. Even now, seeing him included in this deal is borderline shocking because nobody really expected he'd be moved. From the Cowboys' perspective, though, it was never going to be realistic to make a run at either Minkah or Ramsey, especially once the Dolphins and Steelers started combining their assets and creating a bidding war that priced out most of the league. Jonnu Smith also joined the Steelers on a 1-year, $12 million deal that Dallas was never going to touch. All in all, this was a move the Cowboys were never going to be part of, and probably wisely so. Ramsey was already expensive, and somehow he's even pricier after the trade. If you're wondering how I reacted when I saw this news break, picture the meme of the guy blinking and then rubbing his eyes, because that was me in real time. My one-word reaction was wow, though to be honest, a couple of unprintable expletives were mixed in. Let me know what your one-word reaction was in the comments. Just maybe keep it PG so YouTube doesn't ding your comment or block it outright. So with Jalen Ramsey now officially off the board, the question becomes, what does this mean for the cornerback market? And could it spark movement among other teams looking to bolster their secondaries before training camp? I think it's pretty likely that several teams who are lurking around Ramsey now have some clarity and will start exploring different veteran options. For Dallas, there's still a real possibility that they add a corner before Week 1, particularly if Trayvon Diggs isn't fully healthy or if the depth doesn't inspire confidence. Right now, I'd say the Cowboys' depth chart at corner feels like a shaky proposition. Darren Bland is an outstanding player who is going to play a ton, and I believe in him. But Kyrie Elam, who ESPN recently called a surprise breakout candidate, is still a young player with a lot to prove. If Diggs isn't 100% ready to roll by September, you're left with a lot of uncertainty behind them. You're counting on Andrew Booth, who struggled to stay healthy and consistent. You're hoping Israel Mukuamu continues to flash like he has in small sample sizes. You've got Troy Pride and Robert Rochelle, but those guys don't exactly move the needle. The whole picture is dicey enough that I think a veteran signing is almost inevitable. Several teams are probably thinking the same way. The Panthers had been connected to Ramsey and could pivot to another veteran. The Packers still look thin after moving on from Jair Alexander. The Raiders and Rams have cornerback depth issues that are no secret. Even the Chargers might be an under-the-radar team to watch because they need a reliable outside presence. Miami, ironically, could be in the mix for another corner to replace the one they just shipped out, and Minnesota has been linked to the position as well. But the problem is, there just aren't 8 good corners sitting out there on the open market waiting to be signed. If the Cowboys are going to make a move, the most obvious target is Stephon Gilmore. He has extensive experience with the team. He was reliable last year, and he's smart enough to transition seamlessly back into the system. At 35 years old, nobody expects Gilmore to be an elite shutdown corner anymore, but as a serviceable starter or strong depth piece, he's arguably the cleanest option out there. He also reportedly wanted to stay in Dallas, and he was at the Star for a non-official visit earlier this offseason. If the Cowboys get to late July and still have doubts about their depth, I'd be surprised if he isn't near the top of their list. Beyond Gilmore, there are a few other free agent corners who could be interesting. If you want to add a nickel corner, Mike Hilton is the standout name. He has plenty of experience and is known for his physicality against the run, but it's worth noting the Bengals were pulling him off the field on some critical downs, which is a big red flag. If the Cowboys envision Bland moving outside, maybe Hilton makes sense as an interior option, but that's far from guaranteed. Rasul Douglas is still unsigned and probably waiting for the right opportunity. The Texans have had some injuries that might drive them into his market, but it's unclear if that's materialized. Seattle already signed Shaq Griffin, so Rasul's other suitors are drying up. He's 30 and probably wants a chance to start for a contender. Asante Samuel Jr. is the wild card. He's talented, but he had neck surgery this offseason, and that's a massive red flag. Anytime a player has neck or back surgery, you have to be careful. It usually signals the beginning of decline, and outside of a rare case like Tyrone Smith, those injuries can be career-altering. Samuel only played 4 games last year and was dealing with stinger issues that clearly hadn't resolved. If he can pass medical evaluations, maybe he's worth a look, but that's a gamble with real downside. Then there are the more unpredictable names, guys like Jack Jones, who can be brilliant one week and a disaster the next. You never want to be the team relying on a volatile player at corner because the bad games can wreck an entire defense. Kendall Fuller is another option I think makes sense as a flexible piece who can play inside or out. If you're comfortable with your top 2 starters but want someone steady to round out the group, Fuller would be a smart addition. Cam Sutton is also out there, but he struggled badly in Detroit, and the off-field issues make him a risk I don't see Dallas taking unless their other plans fall apart. So here's my question. Will the Cowboys actually pull the trigger and sign a veteran corner before the season? Drop a 1 if you think they will, or a 0 if you don't see it happening. And while you're at it, name a corner you'd like them to pursue, even if it's someone we didn't mention, or you'd rather see them swing a trade instead. Let me know what you'd do in the comments, and don't forget, if you haven't subscribed already, hit that button so you never miss any Cowboys news, rumors, or updates as this off-season keeps heating up.